Okay, today we are going to discuss what is confounding, why we need to address this confounding problem during designing and then analysis phases to see the actual relationship with the exposure to the outcome variable. Okay, so confounding we are learn of that there is a external variable which is going to be directly associated with the exposure variable as well as the outcome variable, as they are jointly related with the exposure and outcome variable. So then when we are looking the association between exposure and outcome variable, sometime there is no biological association is there, but due to confounding factor there is a relationship find there. That's why we need to address this confounding variable. So these confounding, that is external variable, has two types. One is confounding in nature. Really there is a confounding factor, it is treated as a confounding variable, or simply it is some biological association and it is just only effect modifying the effect of the outcome. So effect treated as effect modifier. Okay, so we can say that confounding refers to a distortion of the true underlying relationship or lack thereof between an exposure and an outcome of interest. For example, suppose we are looking the association of coffee intake and developing the lung cancer. Okay, so take consumption of coffee is leads to the outcome as a developing the lung cancer. Okay, so if we have to take the study samples and if we have established, then maybe sometime it is find that yes, coffee consumption leads to the lung cancer. But if we are not taking care of the other external variables which are directly associated with the coffee consumption and the developing the lung cancer. So who are the coffee consuming the coffee? They are sometime doing smoking. So smoking is another factor, external factor, which is directly associated with the coffee consumption. Who are consuming the coffee, sometimes taking are smokers, and smoking again has the direct relation with the outcome in terms of developing the lung cancer. So we need to see that if we had just this smoking factor, then there is an association between coffee consumption and developing the lung cancer. So because of the influence of this third factor, that is here as an example as a smoking, is treated as confounder and we are calling it as a confounding variable. Or we are suppose you are looking the association of smoking as a exposure variable. Now we are considering smoking as a exposure variable and developing the lung cancer as the outcome. Now we can see that who are the smoker, they are also consuming the alcohol. Okay, or some are not consuming the alcohol. So now another third factor, consumption of alcohol, is going to directly associated with the exposure and the outcome variables. So in this case, consumption of alcohol is going to be a third external factor which is going to influence the outcome. So alcohol consumption is going to be a confounder. For example, another situation you have considered that smoking leads to the developing the lung cancer, and when we are looking that who are smokers, and then they are doing, some are doing physical activity, some are not doing the physical activity. So what happens, another third factor which is in physical activity, and that who are doing physical activity, they are going to influence the outcome of interest, that is developing the lung cancer. Either they are a smoker. So here now another third factor is the physical activity. Now if it is going to influence the outcome, then again it is a confounder. So the external factors which are responsible to distort the exposure and outcome relationship, then it is called as confounding variable. Okay, so this confounding variable is adjusted or treated in such a way that they are going to be controlled. So at the design phase, we are treating confounding is a potential to distort the exposure and outcome relationship. So at the time of designing of our study, we have learned that which is information, which variables, which third variables is going to influence the exposure and outcome relationship. So we be very careful in designing phase, and we have to control that at the time of designing. So there are different ways to control this confounding at design phase, and after that its true presence or absence. If a confounder is present while we have controlled in the designing phase, actually it is controlled, then we need to assess through some analysis. So statistical analysis is the appropriate way to see the true presence or absence. A factor like here we have deal with the smoking as a confounder, alcohol consumption as a confounder, and physical activity is a confounder. These factors when we have analyzed, and now through the analysis we are going to see that all the three factors are absence after adjusting at the design phase, then okay, there is no confounder in our study. They all are adjusted at the time of designing phase. If they are not adjusted, then analysis will tells you how to control these to see the actual relationship. So there are different ways to adjust and to see the existence or presence of confounding. We will discuss one by one. So we can define this confounding is an intermixing of the effect of an exposure with that of an independent risk factor of the outcome in terms of disease in our cases, leading to an estimated association that no longer reflects the causal impact of the exposure of interest. If there is no relationship with the risk exposure, but actually it shows the relationship, that is a confounder, that is confounding factor. Now when it is treated as confounding variable, a variable is said to be a confounder or confounding variable if it is associated with the exposure of interest. Like here, if you are taking consumption of coffee, and we are looking the developing the lung cancer, smoking is a directly associated with both, or we can take the smoking as exposure and developing the lung cancer, and physical activity and alcohol consumption as the confounder. It is an independent risk factor for the outcome of interest. Maybe it is directly, here in our case, in our objective, it is a confounder, but actually it is a risk, can be a risk factor. Like here, when we are looking the association of consumption of coffee to develop the lung cancer, and now we are looking the risk factor as a coffee consumption, while smoking as a confounder. But if our aim is smoking as exposure is associated with the outcome, then smoking is a risk factor. So sometimes it is a confounder and it is also treated as risk factor as independent of the outcome of interest. It is not an intermediate along the causal pathway from exposure to the outcome. Okay. So maybe sometime what happens, intermediation, they are going to distort the information, that is also possible. And then this is the relationship of the exposure and confounding, that exposure variable, what we are interested, we are looking the direct relation of the exposure to the outcome. Like coffee consumption is the exposure, and we are looking directly how it is associated with the outcome, that is developing the lung cancer. And we are interested directly, but another third variable is going to influence this outcome or exposure. So what happens, like here, coffee consumption, developing lung cancer, and smoking. So smoking is directly associated with the coffee consumption and also associated with the outcome, or sometimes vice versa. So that's why third factor, that is called as confounder, is vice versa association with the exposure, but also influencing the outcome. That's why we need to control to see the direct relationship between exposure and the outcome variable. So before coming to some example to see how it is going to be controlled with the different steps, we have to know some basics, because we are maximum example we are taking case control design and we are treating with the odds ratio. So just let's consider what is odds and what is odds ratio. Okay, so this so simply odds is the probability of success. Suppose 0.8, so P is the probability of success at 0.8, and then probability of failure is 0.2. So odds of success is 0.8 upon 0.2 is equal to 4. The odds of failure be here it is not showing in the slides the example, but we are just telling you to read and note that. So 0.8 and 0.2, so 0.8 by 0.2 it is 4 times, and here odds of failure is 0.2 by 0.8 is 0.25. Okay, so this description of odds is odds of less than 1 is the mean. Its meaning is that the outcome occurs less than half of the time. So sometime it is protective if you are treating reference as the exposure, then it is protective. If odds of any outcome occurs 1, as this is the ratio, that's why if it is comes as 1, then this means that 50-50 is there. So all the two stratums are there, as it smoker and non-smoker or coffee consuming coffee, yes or no, they are going to be similar in the nature. And if odds of comes as greater than 1, the outcome occurs more than half of the times. So then odds ratio is simply, if there is a 2 by 2 table, then it is a AD by BC. AD by ratio of AD, cell A, cell D, that is, and then divided by cell divided by B into C. That is comes as the odds ratio. So if we have take the similar example, it comes as 16 times of the failure, 16 times greater than odds of coming to the failure. So this is how we can calculate the odds. Now we are coming with the example for our confounding. So suppose a case control study we are taking coffee consumption, yes and no coffee consumption, and then we are looking how they are develop the lung cancer or not developing the lung cancer. So we have done a study, we have find this information. Here we have find that who are coffee consumption developing 260 are developing the lung cancer, while 190 are not developing the lung cancer, and similarly 80 and 150 is the numbers. Here a 2 by T table we have represented, and as I told you that this is the cell A, cell B, cell C and cell D. So odds ratio of looking that how the lung can develop, risk of developing the lung cancer through no lung cancer. So what happens, we have to multiply 260 into 150 A into D, 260 into 150 and then B into C. Okay, so B into C, 80 into 190, it gives the 2.6. So the odds of developing the lung cancer who are consuming the coffee are they are on 2.6 times more on risk of developing the lung cancer. So this is how direct relation comes, that yes, who are coffee consuming, they are on higher risk of developing the lung cancer. So if we are directly assessing with the relation of coffee of developing the lung cancer, then we have find that the risk of developing the lung cancer who are the coffee consumption are 2.6 times more on risk. Now we are aware of the another extraneous variable, that is smoking, which is going to influence the outcome. Then what happens, we have just stratified the information in two strata, that is one is the who are smoker and consuming the coffee, and who are the smoker and not consuming the coffee, and then another group as strata as non-smokers, and then again coffee and no coffee consumption. Then when we have to calculate the odds ratio of association of coffee in developing the lung cancer, then this distribution 250 into 30 and 150 into 50 gives you odds of 1. And again here in non-smoker groups, when we have gone here, we can see that 10 into 120 and then multiplied by 30 into 40, again we got the odds ratio as 1 in the non-smoker group. So you can see that here if we have to interpret our result, that coffee consumption of coffee is not directly any risk relationship to develop the lung cancer, as odds of coming as 1. So again here in non-smoker groups, relation of coffee and developing the lung cancer odds comes as 1. So both the strata are similar, that coffee consumption is not going to directly associated with developing the lung cancer. Another factor which is important here is the smoking, that's contributed through coffee consumption, and that's why we are finding a risk of 2.6 times higher in developing the lung cancer when we are dealing directly with the coffee consumption. Now we can see that here smoking plays a role of confounder, and smoking was associated with coffee drinking. Generally people who are coffee consuming are taking sometime they are smoking. So we can see that total in 400 in the are coffee drinkers, in whole they are smokers, and in non-coffee 80 are smokers. So this is the proportion. If we looks here that smoking is an independent risk factor for lung cancer. So if directly we have to see here that smoking is an independent risk factor for lung cancer, then if we have to calculate here, then you have to see this table, that this from here you can add the information, then you will get this information 301 to 160 and 40 into 180. So here 300. So developing the lung cancer, and in smoker they are 300, 250 plus 50, so that's why they are 300, and here you can see that 180, and this is 180, and here 10 and 30 is 40, and 40 and 120 is 160. So that's why here it is as written as 300 into 160 divided by 40 into 180. So if we have objective that smoking is directly associated with the lung cancer, then we have find that yes, it is 6.7 times higher risk of developing the lung cancer if a person is a smoker, while with the association of if we are derive that coffee consumption is associated with the developing the lung cancer, then we are find only 2.6 times higher risk of developing the lung cancer. So direct relationship is maybe sometime here underestimated. If so, just that's why planning is important. So by separating the group into smokers and non-smokers and examining the relationship between coffee and lung cancer within each subgroup, confounding by smoking was eliminated, and we have defined the actual situation of developing the lung cancer and how much risk of developing due to coffee consumption or due to smoking. So we can say that here there was no independent association of coffee drinking with lung cancer, as odds of coming smoking and non-smoking group as one in both the stratum. So you can say that yes, indirectly coffee consumption may lead to developing the lung cancer, but there is no direct relationship. A person if he is consuming the coffee, then there is less possible, there is no association that it is going to develop the lung cancer. So it is not going to be a direct risk factor, direct exposure variable. The apparent relationship was due entirely due to confounding by smoking. So what the relationship directly, if we are not dealing with the confounding variable, it comes as 2.6 times higher risk of developing the lung cancer when a person is consuming the coffee. So that comes due to a third external variable, that is smoking, and it is a confounding variable. That's why it is comes as the relationship. Confounding can also reduce, eliminate, excaggerate, or even change the direction of true underlying association. Sometimes it is going to only overestimated, is going to contribute, and risk is going to be overestimated. If sometime confounding variable is going to contribute in terms of underestimated the risk. So its confounding variable can lead to the direction of true underlining. So either sometime decreasing the effect or sometime increasing the risk of effect. The presence of confounding can assessed by comparing crude and adjusted effect estimates. So here what we have done, when first we have only directly assess that coffee with the developing the lung cancer, that is called as crude calculation, and then we have adjusted for smoking or non-smoking stratum, and then we have to see that actual comes as 1 but sometime maybe it comes as 1.02 and 1.08 or 1.25. So you need to see that this odds ratio is lying between 10% of the variation. Then bias and confounder are treated as that controlled in nature. Generally statistician or some scientists are taking only thumb rule as 10%. Maybe in real scenario sometime it is going to be 10 to 15%, but generally if it comes, if controlling the variable of confounding or biases comes between the limits of 10%, then we are getting the true effect of the association. So we are need to some steps that is going to be addressed, and that steps is going to control the confounding variables in your study. So first of all, any potential confounder must be measured appropriately. So if you are planning a study, you need to be very careful. You need your subject knowledge, that what the exposure and outcome relationship we are planning to establish. We need that what are the other external variables which is going to be or can be contribute in the outcome variables. So you need to address that. So one method is simply we have to restrict the subjects that is, we have imposed the restriction to include the subjects. Like we are generally, you are aware that we are talking in terms of inclusion exclusion criteria. So we have restrict a subtype of subjects. Like suppose you are looking that coffee consumption and developing the lung cancer, and you are aware that maybe sometime age is a confounding factor. So what happened, you have to take the group, a particular group of age, younger people, so you have to restrict the greater than 40 years of age. Or if you are looking that smoking is developing the lung cancer, and you are restricting that who are diabetic or who are having other comorbidities, we are not going to include the in our study participants. Who, if we are looking that how smoking is associated, but you are distorting the effect of alcohol consumption, so a person who is consuming the alcohol, you are not including your study. So this is how we are restricting a subset of population, and we are going to establish the direct relationship with that exposure variable to the outcome variable. And to eliminate the variation potential confounder, if there is no variation in the potential confounder, it cannot be influence the outcome. So sometime in the time of planning, you have treated some variable as a confounder, but after completing the study, you have find that some variables is not going to be contribute as a potential confounder, so they are not, after completing the study, they are not treated as confounding variables. Okay, so suppose here you are looking smoking and developing the lung cancer, and you are taking other at the time of planning, alcohol consumption, physical activity, age as the confounding variables, and you have planned in such a way that this is going to be adjusted at later stage. So sometime what happens, age and alcohol consumption is adjusted and there is no variability in the both the situations, then it is not treated as now confounding variable, but physical activity is still showing in the analysis that it is contributing in terms of their stratum, then it is treated as confounding variable. So you can see the example, restriction of lung cancer coffee study to smokers only. So for example, in the same situation, we are taking the coffee consumption and who are smoker or who are non-smokers, and if we have imposed the restriction of including the study participants who are only smokers, and then we are looking at how coffee consumption is associated with the developing the lung cancer. So in this situation, you are think of that now I have controlled a very restricted group of smokers, and now what the information is coming in terms of relation of coffee consumption with the lung developing the lung cancer is going to be true. No, sometime you be very careful of that smokers, to strength of smokers, some are mild smokers, some are moderate smokers, some are heavy smokers, so this situation is again going to be contribute. So this smoker has subset of the subjects, then again you need to address that situations. So always you have to think of different way how we have to see the actual relationship by controlling all the situations, then only you have to get the direct association, direct actual information, true information in your outcome with the exposure variable. Now another method is randomization. Randomization is a technique that distributed the group of subjects in such a way that all the factors at the time of planning are distributed in both the group in such a way that all are going to be adjusted, and it is not going to influence the outcome. So simply randomization goal is to distribute the potential confounders, either known or unknown. Sometimes we are aware that it is going to be a confounder, it is going to influence the outcome. Many other factors are also there, and that is we are not aware of that need to be addressed. So that's why randomization is going to control, to adjust the measured and also unmeasured confounders equally between the groups, either two groups or more than two groups, they are going to be distributed in such a way that their effect is going to be null and void in across the groups. Again, if there is no variation in a potential confounder, it cannot be responsible for the differences in the outcome. So similarly here again what we have addressed earlier, but smaller sample size may lead to imbalance between groups with respect to potential confounder. So if there are small sample sizes of your not adequate sample sizes, then this factor is going to contribute there. That's why we are talking about the adequate size, which is going to address all the situation. Otherwise our result is going to imprecise, and it is maybe we are getting an effect but due to chance. Another is stratified randomization. So simply we randomize the subject in the two groups. If we are aware that it is going to be a factor that is very important to address at the time of designing of the phase, then we need to do stratified randomization. For example, we are doing multi-center study, multi-districts we are taking, or multi-set of hospitals we are taking, and across the hospital there is a variability. Then we are treating hospital as a stratum, and then what we are randomizing, in each stratum we are randomizing different way, so that the distribution of across the hospital is going to be similar to contribute in the outcomes. Or we are doing individual study to, then also it is important that all the information, all the distribution are similar in the both the groups. For example, if we take gender, okay, so male and female distribution, then it is you have to take gender as the, suppose times you are taking age, so you have to take the age groups like 15 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40. So all the distribution comes between these subgroups. Okay, so then it is going to be controlled at through the stratification, and it also, if it is controlled and it is really contributed, then when we are looking that what we have planned at the time of planning, it is going to be similar in the analysis. Then we need to analyze the data set and going to see that gender is not going to influence the outcome, age is not going to influence the outcome, study variations, that is study hospital to hospital variation, is not going to influence the outcome. But number of strata limited by logistical constraints. Sometimes logistical not possible, so be very careful that it is not going to be impossible to do the study. So we will take care of that. All reports of randomized studies include a table for assessing the adequacy of randomization. How you have done the randomization, that is also important. As soon as the analysis is limited to subgroups, the control of confounding disappears. As subgroups are adjusted and controlling the confounding factors, it is going to be disappears. So sometime it is going to be compliance bias. Okay, so another method is matching. You can do matching, and matching is going to control the confounding effects. So we can say that matching is an element of observational study design introduced to help the control potential confounders. What are the confounders factors we are going to match in case and control? Suppose case control studies, so we have to match, we have cases and we have to find the similar type of control from the population, then we have to see the association. It involves selection of comparison group that is forced to resemble the index group with respect to the distribution of one or more potential confounders. What the potential confounder we are looking, we have to match in such a way that the distribution in case and control is now looks like similar distribution. In case control study, selection of control group match to cases with respect to potential confounders. So we have cases, and for that cases we have to search the control, so that we have to see that what our interest variable, that is exposure variable, how it is going to contribute to the outcome variable. In cohort studies, selection of unexposed group match to exposed with respect to potential confounders. Similarly, we can do in cohort studies also, and we have to match the unexposed group with the exposed one. And these subjects can be matched for continuous covariates, continuous variable, for example age, or we have blood pressure or hemoglobin. Other are many factors, and we have to make the groups of that quantitative variables, and then we have to match for that. Either we can match the actual age with the actual age, or we have to give the some tolerance of age. How much years of tolerance, that is age, suppose 21 years, then plus minus 2 years, that is 21 year match with the 19 to 23 years any subjects. Then it totally comes with the understanding of knowledge of the subject, what you are planned for your research, and how age is going to contribute. Then only you can do. Otherwise you can do also through categorical covariates also, for example sex, or you have the HIV serology, or another any factors what you are looking that it is going to contribute in the outcome variable. Matching may be done at the level of the individual or of the groups. So matching can be possible individual subject, or we have make the group up like age. I have told you that 21 year subject match with that plus minus 2 years. So this is individual matching. Now I have done that 20 to 25 years as a age group, and we are considering that this age group is going to match any subject with this similar type of age. Then it is treated as a group matching, and it can be also possible in this scenario. In case control study, individual matching means that each case is separately matched with the control, and this what I have told you. Matching can be done in terms of different ratio: 1:1, 1:2, 1:3, 1:4. After 1:4, the result is going to be similar in any cases, either 1:5 or 1:6 you are taking. So 1:4 is the maximum tolerance that you have to going to give the best result. For categorical covariates, individual matching means that for each case the control subjects are drawn from the same category. Like male controls you are taking, then you are considering the male as the control. Male as the case, then you are considering the male as a control, male as the match control for that subjects. Okay, so what I have told for category is through category wise, group wise. So there are some matching method. One is called as caliper matching. So just I am giving you some brief about what is caliper matching. Caliper matching is a technique which defines that how much tolerance we are defining to match with the case from the control subjects. So case we are aware that suppose 30 cases are there, and we are matching for the best match for these 30 cases based on age, based on sex, or based on renal failure, or based on different other factors, based on smoking, based on physical activity, based on alcohol consumption, or many factors can be introduced at a time to match the best control. Okay, so what the tolerance you are defining, but conventionally we are taking caliper value as 0.2 is the best match, that is 0.2 tolerance is the best match. Okay, for example here 31 year male match to 28 year male, 38 year female. Sometime what happens, we doesn't find the match, so you need to add additional controls and then you have to find, otherwise this case is going to be deleted from our study. So matching sometimes decreases our sample size if we are not able to find the best match. Another is nearest neighboring techniques, and it is going to see that how which case has nearest neighbor. The name is there, nearest neighboring technique, nearest one which is best match for this. This is less restrictive, we are able to find some match, but it is not going to best way to contribute in the outcome. At very much flexibility in selecting the best match, That's why sometimes it is going to be overestimated or going to be underestimation. So we have to skip here something. So another is stratified sampling, stratified matching. For example, we are taking the case control study examining coffee intake. Okay, so when we are matching, we are looking for current smoker, we are looking for former smoker, we are looking for neighbor smoker. All we are looking, suppose we have the similar way, we are looking smoking leads to lung cancer, and we are assessing who are doing physical activity, only physical activity. So how much time they are spending in the gyms? Some are 2 hours, less than equals to 2 hour, 2 hour to 4 hour, greater than 4 hours. So the different stratums here, and then we have to match for that. That is comes as a stratified matching. Another is frequency matching. Here number of frequency in such a that the similar distribution of case are found in the control group. So here now we have to consider this stratified analysis to see through a hypothetical example that we are looking that obesity is directly related with developing the heart disease. Okay, so when we have seen that when we are treating a smoker as a confounding variable, then odds ratio comes as 4.6, and if we are taking in the non-smoker group in the 2 stratum, then it comes as odds ratio as 4.6. And now when we do the crude analysis, then what happens that it shows that yes, obesity is contributing in developing the heart disease, and there are who are obese, there are 2.4 times more are on more risk in developing the lung cancer. So sometime what happens, matching is going to adjust these factors. So when we have to convert the relative risk for this, we have to see that comes as 4.6, relative risk of non-smoker groups as 4.6 in the case control study, cohort study, and again we have to do the crude analysis. Then we can see that yes, crude relative risk comes as 4.6. So sometime if through stratum the risk ratio is going to differ, then it is going to distort the actual scenario. So proportion of in the each stratum is also important. Here we can see that small numbers, here higher numbers. That's why overall it is not going to contribute. But if in number is the similar in proportion, then the going to relative risk is going to be similar. So we have some less time. So we have to go for another is mental Hengel-Holtz ratio. This is a method to see how the things are going to be happen and how this is going to be adjusted through weights. So an odds ratio that reflects pooling of effect across strata to summarize the overall association between exposure and outcome while adjusting for the effect of the confounding of concern. Pooling assumes that the effect is homogeneous and variation reflects random error. This error is this weight average odds ratio estimates across the strata similarly. So for this purpose we need a mental Hengel odds ratio method. It tells you that how odds ratio is calculated through mental Hengel method, and it is going to, in the previous example we have seen that when we had done the crude analysis, 4.6 ratio risk is going to be reported as in crude as 2.6 due to variation in the smoker and non-smoker stratum. So mental Hengel method is going to adjust this weight in such a way that the actual risk in the crude analysis is not going to be influence the outcome. So here sum over BC by T multiplied by AD by BC divided by sum over BC by T. So this is total is going to give the weight and that is going to correct the in actual scenario, sum over AD by T divided by sum over BC by T. So similarly what we are doing AD by BC for calculating the odds ratio, now here sum over AD by T and sum over BC by T. So in the previous example we have to see that for the case control study of obesity and heart disease, this would be 480 into 80 by 1000, here 1000, here 100 subjects are there in the second stratum non-smoker. So now we are giving the equal weights with that for the both the strata, though who are smoker, who are non-smoker. Then we are giving the equal weight through utilizing the Mantel-Haenszel method. Then we can see now that now the crude risk comes as 4.6, while in the previous stratified analysis it comes as 2 point something. Okay, now you can see that here what the individual strata, smoker and non-smoker, are showing the 4.6 times higher risk of developing the heart disease who are obese. And now crude analysis is again also showing that yes, who are obese, there is a possibility that they are going to develop heart disease, and that risk is 4.6 times higher than non-obese. So analysis of matched pair data in case control analysis can be thought of as a special case of stratified analysis. Each matched pair constitutes a single stratum with two subjects. Only informative strata are those where exposure status of case control are discordant. So there is a discordant method for that. So due to less time I am going to skip that. So this is the method for discordant, you have to read that. So this is the formula. Here we are taking the n as case exposed and control groups unexposed, n as case unexposed, control group unexposed. So it is a T by S. So this is a discordant pair, and we are looking how this discordant pair is different in the situations. So this is example, we have to skip that. So this is how you can see that this is the example of multiple cirrhosis, of developing the multiple cirrhosis due to infection, and we have to see that cases and control group of developing the MS, and we have to see the discordant pair 20 by 5 is the 4 times more risk of developing the multiple cirrhosis. But here if we are doing the unmatched analysis, so that's why we sometime what happens ki matched pair is going to be overestimated and sometime underestimated. If we are the similar problem, if we are looking for unmatched situations, then what happens, we are find here odds of developing this is as 1.6. so physicians and other factors we are treated as confounder, but still physicians practice is playing a confounding role. That's why we are overestimated in the discordant pair as 4 times higher risk, while actual risk is 1.6 times higher, and that is due to contribution of the physician's practice. Another method is controlling the confounding is the multivariate analysis. Has become the standard approach nowadays, but it is a rigorous process. You need a computer to solve the situation, and it estimate you the best guess estimates through their estimates. And if you have binary outcomes, then you can apply the logistic regression, and you can see that which variable is going to contribute as the confounding variables. If there is a time to event data, then you can do Cox proportional hazard analysis. If it is a count data or interval data, then you can do a Poisson model for count data, and through this you can find the confounding factor, and that confounding factor is going to be adjusted in multivariate analysis to see the exposure and outcome direct relationship in terms of controlled confounding factor. So advantage of matching is promotes to efficiency as discussed above. Studies are most efficient when the ratio of index of reference subjects case control is constant. Very useful in situation where the confounder is difficult to quantify or control. Then stratification is only possible, like here sibling controls, where matching is then best works. When then stratification is not possible, then situation is best for matching. Otherwise matching is sometimes overestimating or underestimating, because doing the matching a similar type of subjects were matched in cases and control, and what we are not going to generalize that is for only the specific type of subjects. So disadvantage for that matching is practical may become expensive, time consuming. You need some time. Cases you have case but you are not finding the controls, so you have to wait for best controls. Okay, the effect of the matching factor on the outcome of interest cannot be evaluated. So what you have done, when we have matched and we have established that yes, exposure variable is contributing in the outcome variables, but what this is due to control matching, maybe sometime matching is contributing in the outcome variables. So how that is going to be evaluated? So that's why contributed at that is overmatching. Overmatched has been done and it is going to contribute in the relationship of exposure and outcome variable. So we have to skip this overmatching. Now the third factor, as when it is not treated as confounding variable, then it is also a third factor which is contributing in the relationship of exposure and outcome variable, that is called as effect modifier. So effect modification refers to the situation where the biologic effect of exposure and outcome differs according to some additional factor. So here effect modifier is some biological factor. So you cannot adjust this biological effect. Just simply you can report this biological effect. Sometimes it is also known as interaction. The term interaction or intermediate variable. It is intermediating and distorting the effect, outcome and exposure relationship effect. So for example, different influence the smoking on development of COPD in men and women, as men are more on smoking and they are more on risk of developing the COPD, while women are less smoking, so they are not. So in this situation, being men and women is influencing the effect of developing the COPD. So in this situation, you need to do a stratified analysis to establish this effect, to monitor, to report this effect modifier effect in your results. In the absence of confounding, the overall effect estimate will simply be an average of stratum specific estimate weighted by the size of strata, for example males and females. So what happens if you are looking the COPD outcome and you are looking exposure of smokers, then you have a bigger size of males proportion and a smaller proportion of females, and it is going to be weighted, then only you can see the actual effect. So effect modification is not the same as confounding. It refers to the biological variation in an effect, not artifactual distortion of result because of inadequate design or analysis. Okay, so that's why effect modifier variable is you have to assess and you have to report how this is going to be contribute in the outcome variables. So effect modification should be noted and reported only rather than controlled. You cannot control it. So multivariate regression is going to adjust the confounding but not the effect modifier or intermediate or interaction. So that's why in multivariate there is a way of introducing the interaction variable, and we have to report that interaction effect in our model. So effect modification is relevant to randomized trials as well as observational studies. So when we are doing randomized trials, we are adjusting all the confounding measured and unmeasured confounding factors, Then sometime there is an intermediate, that is effect modifier variable, and it need to be addressed in terms of reporting how this is going to contribute in the outcome. So effect modification is the only evident from stratified analysis. This effect modifier variable is only can be assessed through stratified analysis with stratification of the factor of interest. Like here, if COPD, smoking, developing the COPD, being male and female is a factor, so we have to develop a stratified group stratum, and then we have to male and female wise we have to see that how smoking is contributing in developing the lung cancer or developing the COPD. Analysis or effect estimate restricted to specific strata, for example women, young adults, elders. This type of scenario have less precision and statistical power than study as a whole. So when we are developing the strata, what happens, we are giving the two stratums and then sample size is going to be smaller. In this situation there is a possibility that what the result we are finding, that is going to be less precise due to small sample sizes. And this scenario, when the sample size is going to be lesser, then we are compromising with the statistical power. So what the effect we are finding may be due to chance. If investigator wish to detect and document effect modification, they need to ensure the necessary sample sizes. So if you are well aware that some factor is going to be an effect modifier, then you have to be very careful of dealing with the sample sizes at the time of planning, that if we have going to do a subgroup analysis, then this number is not going to be lesser than that we have to get the imprecise result, or we are compromising with the powers. Then only it is going to be conclusive of your study, otherwise only you are reporting your findings. So we are suggesting some books, Fletcher's chapter 1, which is well written about this, and Henneker's and Burning's Epidemiology in Medicine. They are evaluating the role of confounding. You have to read. You will be well. If you have any problem, then you can consult to me. If you have any query, then you can write in the comment box. I have to address that.